Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Swati, and in my last video I talked about my first time taking the MCAT. And after a couple questions on the video, I decided to create my retake video. So just to give you some background, I took the MCAT for the first time on July 28th, 2017 I think, or 27th, one of those days, and I got a 510. And so it wasn't a bad score, but I just had to retake it because I had a 124 in CARS, which was the 49th percentile. So the next summer I started working. This is the summer of 2018. I was working full-time in a lab that was approximately 1.5 hours away from my home. And so I really didn't want to take this MCAT again, and I procrastinated until it got to the very last minute, and I realized, okay, I've dug myself into a hole and I really gotta, just push through. So what I did was I studied for the MCAT in 5 weeks while working full-time, and I scored a 518, which is the 97th percentile. My score breakdown was 130, 128, 130, 130. So a lot of you might be wondering how I did it in 5 weeks, that too as part-time, not really studying as much as I should have. So the first thing I did was I didn't actually read any of the Kaplan books that I had from last year. I found that wasted a lot of my time just trying to retake notes and re-understand things. Instead, what I did was in my third year, I had recently taken a lot of biochemistry, physiology, anatomy, and pharmacology courses, which was pretty fresh in my mind. And these courses were much more in-depth than what is normally required in an MCAT, so it wasn't much of I didn't really have to relearn a lot of things because it was already in my mind. However, if you are not taking those courses, I'd highly suggest reading the books, creating notes, and going through that. And of course that would extend your timeline so that you're studying for a bit longer period of time. So at this point, sorry, I'm looking at my phone just to see what I wanted to talk about. So at this point, I knew I had dug myself into a hole, and I had very few weeks to really study for my exam because of my procrastination. And really, I don't want to say that it was a bad thing to procrastinate. I think I needed that summer off to really just reset and focus on what I liked, which was research at the time. But because of how much work the MCAT took the first time I took it, I was dreading taking it the second time, and which resulted in lower motivation to actually study. So what I had to do at this point was really look online to see if anyone had taken it in such a short time span, and I found quite a few resources, but the ones that really helped me were the videos uploaded by Kaur Beauty and MedBros, both of which their channels I'll link below. And basically I used their method and followed it, but catered it to my time schedule. So I'll just insert some screen grabs of how I made my exam packs. So some of you have been asking what a typical day of MCAT studying was for me in such a situation. So I took my first MCAT on June 28th, and that was 5 weeks out from my MCAT date of August 4th. And in that exam, I took the half-length official guide exam provided by AAMC, and I estimated it to be around a 506. And then following that, I think what I did was that's when I really started to buckle down and take my MCAT studying a bit more seriously. So what I would do from there was I downloaded MP3 files of all the Khan Academy Psych Soc section videos and downloaded it and kept it on my phone. So in that 1.5 hour drive to work, I would just play those videos over and over again. And any videos that I seemed to not have a good grasp of, I would take note of and re-listen to those on my way back from work. During work, I did not actually practice or study. The only time I would sneak in some time to study was during lunch break, which was about 30 minutes. And in that time, I would usually just write a cheat sheet in the first time I had taken my MCAT, and I found that very useful. So I decided to kind of copy it the same way. These are things that you must know, must memorize before you enter, and it will greatly help you. So just to give you an example, this is one of the cheat sheets, and I had all of this memorized. So in those 30 minutes, I would try to write both of these sheets out from memory. And that takes about a few days just to get used to, but once it's in your mind, it's always there. And so, always there until you take your exam. And so that's what I did during my lunch times, just got used to the feeling of writing it down. So I think at this point, 5 weeks out, I was just taking one exam per week until I hit about 3 weeks. And so what I do in that one exam, after I wrote that one exam, which would usually be on the weekend, I would review that throughout the week when I came back from work. And this would be a very thorough review where I'd review all the answers I got right and the answers I got wrong. And the reason why I reviewed the answers that I got right was because I wanted to understand what kind of logic and reasoning that MCAT was looking for me to get to that answer. I didn't want to have like the wrong reasoning in my head and still get to the right answer. So yeah, and then the wrong answers took a bit more time to really see why they were wrong. And I used a variety of materials to review anything that I saw I needed help with. This included the Kaplan books that I referenced, as well as any Khan Academy videos. Especially for chemistry, I'll say that Khan Academy was very good because it gives you like quick, fast snippets of information. So the next week I did the same thing with one practice test over the weekend, and that was let me see which one that was. That was the sample test that they have, and I really jumped in this score. I think it predicted me to be around a 517 or 518, between 516 to 520. And from my previous experience with this practice sample test was I knew that it wasn't right. They usually overpredict you, and so at this point I learned not to trust it and to continue studying really hard. So then again, I just reviewed any topics that I was shaky on, and keep in mind that since this was a retake, I had already seen a lot of these questions before, and they were in my mind from a year ago. However, the answers really weren't in my mind. So that's how come I did so well, I think, on these tests, because I had some memory of them and didn't have to spend as much time analyzing the text. So that also kind of led me to underestimate how much my score really was. And then the third week was I took another test. So at this point, I was 3 weeks out from my exam, and what I had done was I followed the Kaur Beauty and MedBros method of creating custom tests from all AAMC practice materials. And so I took my first custom test, and at this point I think I estimated myself to score 510, which I thought was fairly reasonable. And essentially I just reviewed it again, as per always. I did see that my weakest section was cars and psychology and sociology, so that was kind of scary because I didn't have much time left, and the whole reason I retook this MCAT was for cars. So if I didn't improve, then I would be devastated. So on the weekdays when I came back from work, I would just take lots of notes on the Khan Academy videos regarding any shaky topics. As well, As well, I think for cars, I just really sat down and spent a lot of time just analyzing what kind of reasoning they were looking for. And this took quite a bit of time. I think in the beginning I was taking about 5 or 6 hours a day just to analyze my car section. And I think for the other sections it wasn't taking as long because it seemed like I was quite good in chem physics as well as biochem, so it didn't take as long to really do well on those. And then I think at week 3, so that's 21 days out, I realized that I have to really ramp up my studying. So what I did was the next test I took was 19 days out, so 2 days after I had finished my third test. And so that meant that I probably did that test not on the weekend but during a weekday. So how did I manage to work as well as take tests at the same time? So what I did was I contacted my workplace and my lab supervisor and let them know that I would be coming in earlier in the morning and then leaving earlier in the day. So what happened was I'd usually get there around 8 or 9 a.m. and then finish by 3 or 4 p.m. And I would leave as soon as I was done work. However, it was rush hour, so it took a bit more time to reach home. But I would probably get home by 5-ish, and then 5 or 6 I'd start my practice test. And so I would usually finish a test around 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. and I couldn't really do these tests on campus where my lab was because I'd be driving home really late at night and the campus was kind of deserted since it was summer. So yeah, I came home and I did my tests then, and they were really exhausting. I'll say that after a full day of work, to come back home and to take a full practice test again was really tiring. And it was something that I was never looking forward to doing, but I knew I just had to get through these next X number of days. Yeah, so I think the next practice exam I did was on 19 days before my MCAT, and that was my custom test 2, and I got 511 on that. And in that I saw that my car score had slightly increased, but my psych-soc score was pretty much the same. So I decided that I really had to buckle down and pay attention to the psychology sociology section. I know that there's like a 100-page KA psych-soc section. There's also a 300-page one, but I knew that with my time limit I couldn't really spend my time reading 300 pages of psychology and sociology. So what I did was I read the 100 pages and got a general gist of the terms and what they were, as well as I made any flashcards I needed to really memorize those terms. Anything that I needed more clarification on, I would return back to that 310-page Khan Academy thing. And so these can all be found on Reddit MCAT, and so definitely use the resources on there. They're really good. But be aware that you may spend a lot of time just scrolling through Reddit looking for tips instead of actually practicing. So make sure to balance out your time properly. So yeah, I think about 15 days out I saw an improvement, and I was at 513 and 514, and my cards was at 127, which was much better than the 124 that I got in my first MCAT. So at this point I think I decided to do 10 days out from my exam. So July 25th, I took my custom test 4, and I scored a 514 with my cars being 127. Then at this point, I had one last custom test left, custom test 5. However, I think I was too tired that day to do half of it, so I just I did the first half, which was just chem physics, and left it at that because my biochem is just too tired to touch. I tried to use Anki flashcards, but they didn't really help. I downloaded a bunch off of Reddit, but I didn't really use them. I know it feels like I didn't use any of the available resources, and I probably would have been a lot better off if I had started earlier and used them. But in this case, I knew myself I didn't have enough motivation to do that, and I just needed something quick, to get my car score up while maintaining anything above 510. So what I did next was, I knew I was 10 days out from my exam. So again, those cheat sheets that I've been doing at lunchtime, I tried to do them in 10 minutes, because when you have your MCAT exam, before you start your exam, there are 10 minutes to read the rules of the exam, of the MCAT. So if you're already familiar with those rules, which you should be before you go in, you can use that 10 minutes to really write down whatever thoughts you have on a piece of paper that they'll provide you with. So I learned how to basically jot down all of these 2 pages in 10 minutes on my small piece of paper, and that also helped me just memorize it and reinforce it in my brain. It was really important that you memorize this, because I guess in test centers it varies. My test center did not let me actually write down stuff before the exam started in those 10 minutes. Whereas I've heard online that various test centers allow that, and actually last year when I took my exam, they allowed it. So just be prepared for anything really. So then the week before my MCAT, I took a leave from my lab. And in that week, every second day I would go to the public library with a friend, and we would emulate the test conditions by starting at 8 a.m. and going till I think 4 p.m. And so this actually really helped to have a friend along, because during the lunch breaks you can always just talk to each other, and you can kind of ease your nerves about it, as well as suffer through the exam and this brutal testing together. So let me see. In that last week, I had not done any of the AAMC full-length exams, and this is the practice exam 1, 2, and 3. The third one is new. It wasn't there until this year. So I made sure you use those 3 exams right before you actually give your exam, because those are the most predictive exams, and they'll let you know kind of where you'll place in your actual MCAT. It was quite rewarding, because in my custom tests, I thought I was doing around 514, maximum I would get was 515, but then I saw that in my practice exams, those practice full-length tests, I was getting a 519 every single time. So again, the day after I took my exam, I would sit down and review it. But because I wanted to, since it was so motivating to be at 519, I wanted to hit the 520 mark. And in fact, I had this up in my office, in my lab office, where I had my goal. And this wasn't really like my actual goal. This was what I did. I kind of tried to trick my mind in terms of I put a goal down that I think is slightly unrealistic, but is still within the realm of possibility. And so I'd be elated if I got this. But if I got a few points under this, I wouldn't mind. Even if I got like 515, I wouldn't really mind. But this was just to motivate me to work harder towards this goal. In track and field, we always have this thing where when we're running, we pretend that the finish line is much further ahead than what it actually is, so that you keep pushing and you don't give up prior to the actual finish line. So that was kind of my thought process with creating that. And so I thought, hey, I'm getting 519s on all my practice exams. Maybe I can shoot for something higher. And so I would try to review my tests immediately after I'd taken them. Mind you, that's really bad for you and you're just mentally exhausted. But I would try to review them immediately after I took them and review them the next day as well. So I think that left me one day before my exam, where I had finished all 3 full-length practice exams, and I had reviewed them all. And in that one day, I just went over common reoccurring concepts that I seem to struggle with, and it was just a chill day. Like I tried to take my mind off the stress. I took my dog for a walk, watched a movie, and just prepared myself for the next day. So the day of the exam, last year, my exam center was like a couple of hours away from my home, so I had to wake up a lot earlier to get ready and go there. But this year they recognized they opened up a new exam center near my house, so it was only about 15 minutes away, and I think that really helped because I didn't have to wake up so early, and it helped me be focused on my exam. So basically the day of the exam came, I finished my exam, was completely exhausted afterwards, and went out for some Korean shaved ice afterwards, and it was just great, a good feeling. And be sure you enjoy that feeling. And then comes the real wait. You wait about a month to get your results back, and I was very nervous for this. So having friends and family around when you open your results is really important, and I did that, and it was great. I was really happy with my results. I found that the 3 full-length exams were very indicative of what I would get on the actual exam. So yeah, I guess, let me see. I guess some thoughts about all of this. One, I think I could have reached that 520 mark, but I would have needed a lot more time to study, and what I would have done in that time is I would have redone all the tests I had taken so that I could solidify any really missing information that I kept on seeming to miss. However, I knew that for me, it was more important to keep my mental sanity than to extend the amount of time I was studying for. So I opted to be happy with a lower score, but still fairly good. So, let's see. Alright, so one thing is, how did I calculate my custom tests? So the custom tests will not produce a number for you, a section number for you. Like, it won't produce a 130, 132. For you. It will just say how many % you got right. So I took that % I got right and I equated it to the percentiles that you can find on the AAMC website. And then I used that percentiles to determine kind of what score I had gotten for each section. And using that, I totaled it up and I found my scores for the exam. What this did was, I don't think this was an accurate representation. I think it really underestimated me. I thought I was scoring around 512s, but turns out I was probably scoring around 517, 519, 520, around there. So just be aware that it does underestimate your score, but being underestimated is much better than being overestimated because you'll work a lot harder to achieving that score you want. So my biggest takeaways from this whole 2-year-long experience. 1. I wouldn't use methods like triaging or point maximizers. These were taught to me in my Kaplan course from last year, and I think that they're kind of a waste of time. So it took up too much time to really analyze which passages I should do first and skim through them and skim through the questions. I think what worked for me this time and made a big difference was I just did the questions and passages as they came. And the 3 practice exams that AAMC have are very good indicators of how you'll do. So I suggest you do those lastly so that you aren't really too shocked about how the exam went. The 4th thing I have to say is the sample test overpredicts you. So if you decide to do that in the beginning of your prep and you find that you're at a 523, don't take it too seriously. Just think that you're at, I don't know, you're probably really good if you got a 523 on that, but let's say you got like a 512 and your goal was 515. Don't think that you did actually get a 512 and you'll get that on your actual exam. You're probably at like a 506, 508. Next tip is get a really good night's sleep and make sure you eat well the day before your exam and the day of your exam. You want to make sure that you're refreshed, and I know it's easier said than done, but try and not overthink this. Especially if this is your first time, I can understand the jitters you'll have, but just try to make sure that you get a decent amount of sleep. Lastly, don't be too harsh on yourself. I found that from my own prep that the MCAT seems to affect your self-worth, and because it's so closely tied to your intelligence and your ability to study and how much hard work you put in. Don't try to equate that to who you are and how much, like a score does not indicate the type of person you are, and the amazing doctor you will be at some point. You just need to realize that this is just a hurdle that most pre-meds need to get through, and just, we have a saying like, plug your nose and dunk your head into the water and get it done. Some of the things I feel like really helped me this time when I took it was, one, using only AAMC materials. The reason why I say this is because the questions on these AAMC materials closely follow the questions you'll get on your actual MCAT exam. And these questions also give you a good idea of the type of logic and reasoning AAMC is looking for in your actual MCAT. So by training yourself to only use these materials, I think that you'll get better at kind of understanding the exam strategies and the kind of patterns that AAMC includes in their exams, especially for cars. When I used the Kaplan exams and Next Step exams last time I took my MCAT, I felt like the questions weren't really similar at all. I think they were quite different, either being too easy or too hard, and you really didn't know where to put yourself. So I'd suggest only using AAMC materials. Lastly, one thing that I think really helped me was taking all the prerequisite courses for the MCAT. And so this includes first and second year chem and bio, but also taking biochemistry as well as physiology and anatomy. So I think these really helped because it cut down the amount of time I needed to study. If I hadn't taken these prerequisites, as was my first time I took my exam, I think I would have taken a lot longer. The first time I took my exam, I had to read through all the Kaplan books so that I could understand some things that I hadn't learned yet, and that took me about 6 weeks just to get through content review. So I'd suggest taking the MCAT when you've learned these things in school, because at school they go a bit slower, they explain things more fully, they go more in depth, and there are people and profs to really clarify things for you. And so since they have all these resources, the MCAT and the things they test you on seem kind of surface level as compared to the stuff that you learned in class. I think that was one thing that really helped me in cutting down my time to 5 weeks, that too part-time. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Just a warning, I will be on a hiatus for the next couple of weeks. I have an MMI interview that I have to prepare for, so that's where my focus will be. I'll be sure to make more videos. Just let me know in the comments below what you want to see, and I'll deliver. Okay, thanks guys, good luck studying.